Pregame.com.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. I'm joined with Tony George. We're breaking down the Big 12. Next up, we're looking Texas A&M. Texas A&M, a lot of people, Tony, they think this team's the team that's going to battle Oklahoma right to the wire. And they showed a lot of signs last year of life. They finished the season 9-4, and they had one 3-week stretch that wasn't good where they lost 3 games last year, and those losses came against Oklahoma State, Arkansas, and Missouri right in a row. But you take that one gap out, this was a team on the rise, and they bring back almost the entire team.
Yep.
10 on offense, 8 on defense. Is this team for real? Are they ready to make the next step?
The only reason I did not take this team, and I like this team as well as I like Oklahoma, the only reason, obviously, pregame.com, you can check out my Big 12 season preview in the blogs with all the write-ups on all these teams. But the only reason I didn't take them to win the Big 12 conference this year is the fact they're playing Oklahoma and Norman. Really, that's what it boils down to, because this is the most physical, experienced team. I've never been a Sherman fan, Mike Sherman fan, a coach when he's at Green Bay or otherwise, but I got to hand it to him. They won a big game against Nebraska last year when I thought maybe Nebraska, heart ripped out, set aside. I thought Nebraska, set that on the table a minute, was maybe the top 5 team in the country when they went in there. With a healthy Taylor Martinez at the time. And, of course, he got knocked out in that game, and they won a game aided by the refs. But that was right kind of after that streak where they were just, getting their rear kicked in. And for them to come back, pull themselves up, win some big games down the stretch. They've got a tremendous quarterback in Tannehill. He's a dual threat guy, but he's got a great arm. They've got a 1-2 punch at running back. They've got Fuller back at wide receiver. He's a game breaker, and they got the top 2 receivers and top 2 rushers are back. The entire offensive line's intact. Their special teams are intact. And their defense, I lost Von Miller, the first-round draft pick, was huge. But that'd be like having Mike Singletary on your college team and he graduated.
Yeah.
But you're bringing or Ray Lewis, but you're bringing everybody back. It's still some real big shoes filled because he was the emotional leader. But physically, they are as physical as any team in the Big 12, including Oklahoma. And the difference between a team like Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, the difference between these 3 teams, for everybody out there keeping score, is 3 or 4 points between the 3 of them. And then you got Missouri and Texas in there that are a little further down the food chain, but not far. But this is a team, somehow, if they can catch Oklahoma making some mistakes, Oklahoma's not going to overlook them. They're not going to overlook Missouri this year because they both beat Oklahoma last year and they got them at home.
Right.
Even with Oklahoma having Missouri, the week after Florida State, they're not going to be down for that game because they got their butt whipped in Columbia. They won't be down for or overlook or take the game lightly against A&M because they also, it's one of those things where I think that that game, the Big 12 title hinges on November 5th. That tells you how it's going to play out for the rest of the season. Because the Baylors of the world, the Kansases, the Iowa States, even Missouri this year, there's not going to be some surprise team that's going to jump up through the ranks. It's going to be Oklahoma or Texas A&M or Oklahoma State. And Texas A&M, they can run the table. They actually can run the table. And a great futures bet this year is A&M over 8.5. I did a video podcast here at Pregame on my profile page. Go back and review that. But over 8.5 wins for Texas A&M is a shoe-in.
Yeah, well, this team won 9 games last year. They were 9-4. We talked about they had that one stretch, and it was kind of, what happened to them, during that stretch. Now, granted, when you play Oklahoma State, Arkansas, and Missouri, who were all good ball clubs, that's a tough 3-week stretch.
It's like a bowl game every week.
This is a team that offensively had no problems last year. This team could score on anybody. They scored 33 points or more 7 of the 13 games last year. That wasn't the problem. What happens is sometimes that Texas A&M defense played very good, and sometimes it was like, where did the defense go?
Right.
And they need to fix that consistency for them to get, that's to me, I have no problems with the offense. if the defense can make a step forward, then this is a team that instead of a 9-4 team, you're looking at a 10 or 11 win team,
Right.
and see where the season goes. But can they shore up those and not have those mental lapses or whatever it was last year defensively in some of the games?
They gave up a lot of big plays, especially in the secondary. Now, the one thing I think the strength to this team versus, in my mind, any other team in the Big 12, and it's something that really, really wins football games, that is fundamentally what everybody wants, is a balanced attack. Mm-hmm. They can run the football better than anybody in the league, and they got a quarterback that can run the football. If he spreads you out, play action, he could take off and go. But they have a running game, and with that, high-octane offenses aren't on the field as much if you can grind it out and get physical. Mm-hmm. You're keeping Brandon Weeden from Oklahoma State off the field. You're keeping Missouri spread attack off the field. You're keeping Landry Jones from standing back there and launching 40-yard howitzers. Yeah. You're keeping them on the bench where they're not establishing a chemistry and a rhythm with those style of spread offenses, where I think that Texas A&M is a lot more conventional style offense. Big East style offense, if you must. Okay. One of those meat and potatoes types. And I think that's going to be the real key for them, is not to give up big plays and to be able to grind it out and really balance their attack.
Well, they say sometimes one of the best defenses is a good offense.
Yeah.
And, again, not to go to Pittsburgh, but, the Steelers, their defense is always good all the time. But the Steelers are a team that always dominates time of possession because they run the ball so well. And it's hard to score when you're not on the field. And so often, and especially in college football, when you have these high-octane offenses, like you say, that are rhythm offenses and they like to go, 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 what ends up happening is when they sit for long stretches of time, when the quarterback gets in there, it's almost like he's pressing too much because, you're anxious. You've been so long since you've been on the field.
Right.
And that's when mistakes can happen. So that's a very good point. I think Texas A&M is the team that can give Oklahoma, the run for the money. I agree with you. I think this is a 3-team race this year. We've been spoiled the last few years with all of the good teams in the Big 12, and they all had, there's so many great quarterbacks, and when we get to one of the teams later, they got to fill a big hole, one of the teams, Missouri, and that's a big difference when you're going against a conference that's loaded with quarterbacks, and it's your turn to reload. You're playing catch up. Let's face it. So Texas A&M, they've got all the pieces of the puzzle there. They had a good year last year. Everything points to improvement this year. We'll see if they can make that next step. They're definitely heading in the right direction. He's Tony George. I'm Marco D'Angelo. We're going to be right back. Next up, we're going to take a look at team number 3. We feel top contender in the top 3. Oklahoma State will be next.